The Book of Job, a deep dive into suffering, faith, and divine wisdom. The Book of Job is one of the most profound and challenging books in the Bible, and it stands out for its exploration of human suffering, divine justice, and the mystery of God's ways. It is a book that defies simple explanations, offering instead a complex narrative about a man, Job, who faces the unimaginable, the loss of everything he holds dear. His story is timeless and speaks to the enduring question that all humans face. Why do the righteous suffer? The opening scene, Job's prosperity and sudden misfortune. The story begins with a brief but powerful introduction to Job. Job is introduced as a wealthy man, living in the land of Uz, who is known for his piety, his righteousness, and his fear of God. He is a man who has everything: health, wealth, family, and a reputation for being a man of integrity. Job's life is one of blessing, and everything seems to be in perfect harmony. However, the tranquility of Job's life is shattered in a divine council in the heavens. Satan, the adversary, challenges Job's integrity, arguing that Job only worships God because he has been blessed with prosperity and protection. Satan claims that if Job's wealth and blessings were taken away, he would curse God. To test this claim, God allows Satan to strip Job of everything: his wealth, his health, and his family. In one day, Job loses all his possessions, his children are killed, and he is struck with painful boils from head to toe. Yet, remarkably, Job does not curse God. Instead, he utters the famous words, "The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. May the name of the Lord be praised." This opening sets the stage for the central themes of the book: the nature of suffering, the question of why bad things happen to good people, and the relationship between human beings and God. Job's response reveals a deep faith, but his journey is just beginning. The three friends, theories of suffering and the search for answers. Job's three friends, Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar, arrive on the scene after hearing about his misfortune. They sit with him in silence for 7 days, offering their support and companionship. However, their silence is soon broken by Job's lamentations. Job expresses his sorrow, his bewilderment, and his longing for answers. He asks why he, a man who has always lived righteously, must endure such suffering. The friends, in turn, offer their theories of suffering. Each of them is convinced that Job's suffering must be a result of some hidden sin. They argue that suffering is a form of divine punishment, and that God, in his justice, only allows suffering to come upon those who have sinned. They believe that if Job will repent and confess his sin, God will restore his blessings. Eliphaz, the first to speak, suggests that Job's suffering may be a result of his pride or his failure to show compassion to others. Bildad asserts that Job's children must have sinned, and that they are the ones who deserved the judgment. Zophar, the most harsh of the three, insists that Job is being punished far less than he deserves and that Job should humble himself before God. At first glance, their arguments may seem plausible, as they reflect a common theological assumption, that suffering is always the result of sin. This perspective has been held by many throughout history, and it still influences much of how people understand suffering today. However, Job's friends fail to acknowledge the complexity of human suffering and the mystery of God's ways. Job's struggle and God's silence. As the debate unfolds, Job becomes increasingly frustrated. He does not accept the idea that his suffering is deserved punishment. Job insists that he has not sinned in a way that would justify such extreme suffering. He longs for a chance to present his case before God, to ask why he, a man of integrity, is being treated this way. He wants to understand the reason for his suffering, and he is not content to accept simplistic answers. Job's struggle is not just with his friends but also with God. He questions God's justice and longs for an explanation. He even wishes he had never been born, contemplating the possibility that life itself is a cruel joke. Job does not mince words. He is raw, honest, and even rebellious at times, but his questions are not an act of unbelief. Job is not rejecting God. He is seeking a deeper understanding of God's will. He does not curse God, but he does wrestle with the mystery of his actions. This intense inner turmoil of Job reveals the complexity of suffering. It shows that suffering is not simply something to be explained away with easy answers. It is something that demands engagement, something that calls us to ask hard questions, and to confront the mysteries of life and the nature of God. God's response. A divine perspective. After much debate, Job's suffering is addressed not by the wise words of his friends, but by the direct intervention of God. In a dramatic and powerful moment, God speaks to Job out of a whirlwind. God does not offer a direct explanation for Job's suffering, but instead asks a series of questions that highlight the vast difference between God's infinite wisdom and human understanding. God asks Job, "Where were you when I laid the earth's foundations? Tell me if you understand. Who marked off its dimensions? Surely you know." These questions are not meant to belittle Job, but to remind him of his limited perspective. Job, in his suffering, has been trying to comprehend the mysteries of the universe, but he lacks the understanding of its creator. God's response is not an explanation in the way Job might have hoped, but it is a revelation of the divine perspective. God is sovereign, and his wisdom is beyond human comprehension. In the face of this divine revelation, Job is humbled. He realizes that he cannot understand everything, and that he must trust in God's wisdom and justice, even when he cannot see the bigger picture. Job repents of his questioning and acknowledges the limits of his own understanding. He submits to God's will, recognizing that there are mysteries beyond human grasp. The conclusion. Restoration and faith. In the final chapters of the book, God restores Job's fortunes. He gives him twice as much as he had before, blesses him with new children, and grants him a long and prosperous life. However, the book does not end on a simple note of happiness or reward. Job's restoration is not a return to the status quo. It is a deepening of his relationship with God. He has come to know God in a more profound way through his suffering, and his faith has been tested and refined. The book of Job does not provide easy answers to the problem of suffering. It does not tell us why the righteous suffer or why God allows evil in the world. Instead, it invites us to wrestle with these questions and to seek God in the midst of our pain. It challenges us to trust in God's wisdom, even when we do not have all the answers. Job's story is not just about suffering. It is about the relationship between humanity and God, and the faith that sustains us through the trials of life. The book of Job ultimately shows that suffering is not meaningless. It can lead to a deeper understanding of God, and it can refine our faith. Job's journey is a testament to the power of enduring faith, the importance of asking hard questions, and the mystery of God's ways. It is a story that continues to resonate with believers and non-believers alike, offering profound insights into the nature of suffering, the search for answers, and the beauty of trusting in God's sovereign wisdom.